So yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming. Excited to have our typical bi-weekly AMA. First things first, I do want to mention that going to the sale, we are going to have another AMA next week, just to make sure people feel prepared as we get new people in here, or if anyone has questions about that. And then, this is also an opportunity once we get to the question section, if anything has come up over the last few weeks after the sale announcement and tokenomics stock drop and early community sway and everything like that, by all means, we're happy to take questions on that. This week, it's going to be pretty casual in terms of updates. We have been working very hard on both the development of the game, UI, getting everything prepared for the sale, and just chugging along. I know Proto is deep into balancing and supply chain, which has been going really well. And then I think that's really it from general updates. We also have some, I would consider a very big announcement coming fairly soon. We can't give any details on it yet, but when it happens, you'll know. Yeah, Chris, I'll pass the mic over to you. Maybe there's some things you want to talk about in terms of how the development of the game has been going, and we can then go to Sergey about UI and Proto to balancing out those supply chains.
I'm just wondering if the announcement is cats.
I don't know if I would consider that a big announcement, but maybe to some people it would be.
Maybe the biggest. So yeah, so things are moving along. I like to usually kind of start with some communication about the progress with StarkNet, given its importance, of course, for us. For those of you who have been playing with StarkNet on testnet and on mainnet the last couple of weeks, you'll probably have seen that they successfully upgraded to 0.11, which is the finally the introduction of Cairo 1. And that's the evolution of the Cairo language, which is now Rust-based instead of Python-based. And it sets the stage for the launch of 0.12, which is intended to come in roughly a month and is supposed to seriously accelerate the performance of StarkNet. So that's the point at which we're going to start seeing like order of magnitude improvements, like 10x for that one, and then likely some additional substantial improvements in throughput coming soon after. So that's really exciting because like all these pieces are falling into place that are obviously needed for a game or an on-chain game, where we need the speed while keeping costs low. So it's exciting to see all of that happening now. Also, 0.12 will include finally the last real blocker we have, which is randomness. So we'll be able to support all of the cool random actions, or at least random influenced actions like scanning and like core sampling and various actions that result in random events depending on what actions you're taking in game. So also quite exciting. We're getting very close to the end of those kind of core blockers, and I actually think that the amount of pushing that we have done as a team to encourage Starkware to include randomness in StarkNet, I think will have a huge amount of value for games on the platform, because it's something that as of yet doesn't exist on the other roll-ups. So I think it may be one of the components that attracts a larger game ecosystem to StarkNet over time. As for influence development, it is moving along quite quickly. We're pretty heavily focused right now on the public buildings, so specifically the marketplace, as well as looking at the habitat and fully nailing down all the implementation details, designing UI, discussing kind of how we approach exposing all of the juicy market data across the belt. So that's all moving along really well. Of course, also a lot of focus on going on the sale itself, which is going to start on April 11th and run through April 18th. We're feeling really good about that as well. Have been doing a lot of testing, make sure that things are rock solid for rolling that out on the mainnet, which again will also include claims of sway related to the asteroids and crewmates from the first two sales. So, yeah, JP.
Yeah, I mean, overall, hopefully that's exciting. Some of the stuff about randomness may, go over some people's heads, but this is really big. I mean, you see a lot of other chains or projects be like using chains, say, or VRF, whatever it is, and the reason being is like you're trying to make sure that these things are fair and random. So, for games, that's hugely impactful, and having that
Well,
native.
actually, I'm glad you bring that up because it's probably worth mentioning why we haven't just gone the VRF Oracle route. They are there. They're out there. We could even provide randomness ourselves as an Oracle. But I have honestly always thought it's a very centralizing force, and it creates a pretty significant point of failure. Because like even with the best known, most adopted VRF, which comes from Chainlink, it entails putting link tokens into your contracts and making sure that there's always enough available to be generating randomness. To me, that's a bit scary. It means suddenly there's some pretty active management required to ensure there's always this pool of tokens present, and if there's not, the game stops, literally grinds to a halt. And considering the name of our studio is Unstoppable Games, I think that would be probably the wrong direction. So we've worked really hard to try and implement a source of randomness that is 100% decentralized, that we can rely on just as much as the underlying infrastructure that runs the smart contracts themselves. And I think that we've achieved that. So that's really exciting to me, and I think it fits really well into our general philosophy and the general goal for the game to be truly unstoppable.
Yeah, and I think it also empowers everyone in the future who's a community builder or wants to make an add-on or something that may rely on randomness. Something that our kind of new tokenomics system has done is it, put that at the very background, and then with randomness being in the actual contract follow and things like that, like you're mentioning, Chris, I think that it just makes a much more healthy and vibrant ecosystem that is easy to build in rather than having to like constantly add in new tools or figure out how to, provide randomness or how to provide economic flow to these applications. Like it's all there. So I think you get to enjoy the game, and builders who add value can just plug right in and not have to worry about a lot of the things that, I think most other games are going to run into huge challenges in the future. So, with that, though, I will pass it to Sergey. Maybe you want to just describe a little bit about what you've been working on. It's been a ton of fun watching it. You build, so maybe we can share some with the community here.
Yeah, definitely. Lots to go. Lots is happening on the UI front. Very excited. So I think the last time I was here in the AMA, I was describing the new HUD, which is looking excellent, mostly mapped out, mostly built already. I've already started, I've moved on since then. I've mapped out a good portion of the spaceship travel experience. That's going to be really fun when that comes online. Right now, I am going through and doing a pass. Yeah, I shared with you guys a little bit a few weeks ago, which I'm continuing on the pass for the action windows, and I'm setting us up for, I think, a really good refresh on all of the core actions that you guys got to experience in test 3, and it's going to set us up for all of the rest of the actions in the game. That's pretty cool. Like I kind of I can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's another cool thing. Like I can kind of see the last bits and pieces of UI that are needed to complete exploitation now, and it's just about shining a flashlight and kind of like stepping through those experiences one by one. We have right now as today I'm sitting there looking at finalizing what the flow for actually setting up building sites, moving materials to those building sites. It's going to be a big part of that was partly done in test phase 3, but now we're going to have a final kind of a playthrough with actual required materials and building costs, because the buildings don't just get erected right away. So stepping through that step by step where you set up a site, then you have to do multiple warehouses or a single warehouse to move the materials onto the site. Then you kind of press go to begin construction on that site. And then from there, we have kind of the last few actions, which have not been revealed yet, but we're going to have all of the manufacturing actions. Those are going to be kind of the most advanced sort of moves that people will take in the game. They're gonna so we've been setting up a really good framework for our windows to handle those. And then, well, this is kind of cool. I haven't really started on it yet, but we did a little bit of a dive and began exploring what our needs for marketplaces are going to be. And that'll be really fun, and I'll be hopefully sharing with you guys along the journey as I dive into market dynamics, which should be really fun.
Yeah, thank you, Sergey. I'm going to pass the mic off over to Proto. I know you're just knee deep in balancing.
Actually, I'd love to be knee deep in balancing, but at this point, I'm still working on recipes. There's just so many numbers in these production chains. Like, I mean, there's 250 processes and a little bit less than that, of products, and each of those have several numbers associated with them. So you can sort of do the mental math on how many different numbers there are in these chains. I'm really chugging away with working through those. Currently, I've been adding a bunch of volumes to products, which basically says how much volume per unit mass. It's like a density, more or less, but expressed as a volume per unit. For each object. So that dictates, how many of, say, an acid or a hydrogen or a various denser elements, how many of those you can fit in a certain amount of volume, which will be super impactful, obviously, for when you're loading up your ships. There will be a lot of things cases where you'll be volume limited on your ship rather than mass limited on your ship, and vice versa. I think you all will probably enjoy that trade-off quite a lot, figuring out, how to best optimally fill your ship up, because sometimes like you'll want to do something that gets you exactly perfectly limited on both. So you'll load up a certain amount of a very massive object and a certain amount of very light objects, so that both of your mass and your volume limits are filled up to the maximum. That may actually be the most economically rational thing to do in some cases. So I think you'll all probably enjoy that trade-off. Working through that, there's actually a very interesting thing related to volumes, which is I've been sort of thinking about packing density, because if you just sort of naively go and like, what's the density of nickel, or what's the density of hydrogen, like you'll get a certain number. But if you sort of think about how is that actually stored in your ship, you can't just like literally fill your whole edge to edge with solid nickel or solid this or that. Like there's always voids in them. There's gaps where that actual material isn't present, the bulk material isn't present, and that's what's called packing density. And the various shapes, sort of in roughnesses, and sort of like powders versus cylinders versus there's just all these different shapes that material can be in, and that actually determines the packing density of that material, along with like packaging and other sort of concerns that might come in with like fluorine. Like you cannot fill your ship with fluorine 100%. Like you have to have very thick non-reactive containers for it, and so that takes up some volume away from the actual fluorine itself. So I'm building those numbers into the volumes just to make sure that they're not like naively just set at the density of whatever that material is on its own. And so I'm getting some pretty interesting numbers there. I think, again, I'm looking forward to sharing these with you guys, since I think there'll be a lot of theory crafting that may not have fully propagated yet, based on some of these numbers for these products. And I'm also doing recipes. That means in a lot of cases, I've been working on the refinery recipes specifically, since those are by far the most complicated to figure out. The manufacturing ones are just a lot more sort of hand wavy. I can speculate about how many pieces go into an avionics module in a way that I can't about how many atoms go into a particular molecule. So I'm doing stoichiometry, sort of a lot of sort of balancing of chemical equations to make sure that the outputs sort of make conserve the number of elements in a reaction in the refinery in a good way. I think I posted about this in general, but there's some rather interesting cases where a reaction has an output, like one of the reaction byproducts is a material that actually doesn't feature in our game. So you'll see a case where a process that you run in the refinery has several inputs and several outputs, but you might notice that the overall mass went down from the outputs, and you're like, hey, what gives? Where did some of that go? And the answer is that it went into products that don't actually exist in our game for various reasons, just because either they're really hard to energetically separate. You would have to spend so long separating them back into usable products again that it wouldn't be worth it for anybody to do. So let's not bother putting that in the game for now. Or it's something that we'd have to create a special recycling process or sequence of processes to get it back to usable products. And again, that's just not worth the complexity budget to have it in our game. Certainly in the future, we might opt to go in and put those products that we didn't include in later because they might have actual uses that we come up with, for example, in discovery. So don't take the lack of any particular product as us saying we're never going to have it. It's just that for exploitation, it doesn't make sense. It's not a huge priority to have that particular product. So sometimes you'll see that when you're doing processes, but a lot of times now you will see several outputs from a process. A lot of them that involve acids, you might get water or sulfur dioxide as a byproduct, for example, just because they're doing a particular reaction that creates that byproduct. And I think a lot of you will find value in getting some of those secondary outputs, which, mind you, you will get less of than the actual stoichiometry will say, because you have to choose a primary output, and that's the one you get 100% of, and then the secondary outputs you'll get less of. But you'll get some of it, and I think in particular with things like sulfur dioxide or with water, you'll find a lot of uses for those secondary outputs that you can sort of feed into other processes, or in some cases even into the same process. I think that'll be a nice side benefit of some of these reactions. But that's pretty much where I'm at right now, is churning through these hundreds of numbers to try to get to a point where I can actually really start the balancing properly. Since all the numbers play together, they have if I change one number in one place, sometimes it has a ramifying effect all the way up or down the chain in terms of balancing. So I kind of can't balance things in isolation from each other. They all sort of have to exist within the unified balancing context. And so getting all the numbers first is pretty important. So I've been working through that. And yeah, otherwise just discussions about mechanics, as Chris said, working on, for example, how to habitats, access to habitats, fees for habitats or for spaceports or for marketplaces. There's a lot of sort of questions about how those public buildings work. And I think there's some really interesting mechanics that are under discussion there, which we will update you guys with in due time, but I think they're not quite fully baked enough yet to properly share yet. So maybe one of these weeks you'll hear some more about those buildings and how exactly access and fees and limitations will work with those. But yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at.
Thanks, Bredo. Before we get too deep into past this conversation and into questions, I think one question from the community from Shared Axie is: will the balancing be fluid or subject to change even after exploitation is launched? I think that's probably a good thing. Chris, maybe you want to take that?
Sure. I mean, yes, it will, but it's one of the things that I think about every time Proto's talking about this. Balancing, the goal of balancing is, I think, somewhat different. Proto, you can go into more detail with this if you want, but it's sort of different with the approach we're taking to building influence versus the approach that you would expect with, I guess, a traditional game where their sinks are controlled, because we don't have explicit sinks for sway. In general, because it is a open economy game, so ultimately our goal with balancing is really around trying to ensure that each of the types of asteroids are balanced, and that's something that ton of
Chris, you're breaking
effort
up a little
into ensuring at the launch of exploitation. But going forward, that balance is... Oh, apologies. Can you guys hear me okay? Check.
Yeah, moderately.
Hey, you're in and out.
Let me
Yeah,
try
I
to
take it
slightly
you're
relocate.
walking outside behind a big skyscraper or something.
Well, not really.
A tree.
A tree, yes. How about now? Any better?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. It sounds like I may be a little delayed, so I'll just keep going until I'm told that I am breaking up again. So I think in general, like our initial goal is really all about balancing the asteroids themselves as the source of raw materials. Beyond that, we're trying to reflect realism. I think the economy will largely figure out the balance between those kind of processed and refined materials. And then going forward, the balancing is it's really going to be about balancing the introduction of new aspects of the game. So you can imagine as we get towards discovery and we are defining the game design for what the basic example, but for what an advanced refinery looks like, or what the introduction of new production chains looks like, that then is going to be another exercise around balancing to ensure, again, that we are balanced around kind of the baseline production of the belt and its distribution of spectral types. So I think we do have a little bit more flexibility, and that's nice because the economy is more than capable of balancing things that come after.
Yep, and I'll second that. I mean, balancing really is like basically the process of going from having an intent about how a game will play, like how certain things will work, to actually implementing the numbers that try to get that intent realized. So we have a certain intent, for example, around asteroids being, spectral types being more or less playable or equivalent or valuable each in their own way on a certain level of equivalency. So as Chris said, like one of the goals of balancing the production chains is to ensure that the raw materials coming from each of those spectral types each have their own sufficiently valuable niches to make those spectral types be each, valuable in their own way. But as also Poise pointed out, like markets are a very nice way to sort of do a lot of balancing automatically. Markets find their level, they find their equilibrium, regardless of whatever numbers I pick. Like the market will just adapt appropriately. So if I mess up with the balancing in a certain way, for example, if I misestimate how valuable, say, platinum is going to be, and it turns out to be way less valuable than I expected, all that means is the market will just price it less compared to what I had been intending. What maybe like reality prices it at. So on some level that's a mistake, and on some other level it's like, okay, it's fine. Like the market's just that's the new price for it. And if I made the M-type asteroids depend on platinum for part of their value, and now platinum is worth less, and then M-type asteroids are now worth less than other types of spectral types of asteroid, that is more of a mistake that I do need to fix. I do need to repair. And so I think overall the answer is we're trying to shoot for good enough balance for everything that the market can kind of take care of the rough edges, and that the broad strokes, like the spectral types being pretty close to balanced, are preserved. And if those broad strokes don't work how we want them to, then yes, that might be something we need to fix later. I mean, as an unstoppable game, our goal is to eventually make it so that no balancing change can make it through without broad community support. Like we don't want to have one of those situations where Vitalik's paladin got nerfed without his consent. Like we want him to have at least had a chance to vote on that. So that's coming down the pipe later. But for now, when the game is still in its infancy, yeah, we'll still be doing some balancing here and there if we decide we really need to for the game's overall success.
So I think the next kind of topic Chris and I were talking about earlier that we wanted to bring up was kind of the rise of AI, ChatGPT, Midjourney, things like that, and hearing from a team that's now actually using it on a daily basis in kind of our workflow in different capacities. It's been really, really exciting. I've been spending a fair amount of my time trying to see what can be achieved with these programs and how they can be utilized in ways that can make a small, agile team like Unstoppable Games right now more efficient. In startup culture, grind is just a thing. We work a lot. We're very focused on certain goals, and we don't have a lot of extra hands to do certain things. So having AI kind of be an assistant or a helper to get us further along faster is really, really cool. So, to start off, I'll just give maybe a little bit about how I've been using it, and then Chris, maybe you can describe where you see it going. But, right now, a lot of the stuff that I do in the background that none of you guys really see is I reach out to people, I write for requests for interviews, I talk to people about partnerships, I look at creators and try to contact them. And it's a lot of just writing, and some of it's pretty repetitive, and there's just kind of subtle changes that you want to make. But I'm not saying that I'm the greatest writer in the whole world. So being able to leverage ChatGPT right now, put in what I've written, and ask it questions of being like, you're a marketing exec at a big four company. And here are some comments about the below article. Rewrite it to make it more, successful in reaching X audience. And it'll do it really well. Like, it's surprisingly good at it. And then on the social media side of things, we have all these ideas and stories and things that we need to put out there, and editing them throughout the team and making sure spelling and punctuation and everything like that looks good is time consuming. So having me just be able to use that as like, here are all the things, and let it fix or change, and then just kind of being able to put it into our scheduler is extremely valuable in my opinion. That's something that you would typically hire kind of like a social media coordinator to help with, and then you pass it up the chain, and now you can kind of combine that into one role, which is pretty cool for a team like ours. I think that's where I'll leave it for me right now. Chris, maybe you want to talk about where you see it on the development side.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the first, the main point, right, is that we were a blockchain NFT metaverse company, and we felt like we didn't have enough buzzwords, so we needed to add AI in there. And now we've done it. So now we've got 4. We're collecting all of them. But no, seriously. AI, it's been interesting to sort of put our foot in, start experimenting with ChatGPT, ultimately start subscribing to that service so we get access to GPT-4, using the OpenAI API to build Muse, which I thought it's not finished, of course, there's some improvements that can be made, but I was pretty shocked by how fast we were kind of able to put that together. Really, the only limitations that I've seen from, well, not the only limitations, but one of the major limitations is really just the date cutoff that it's aware of. Most of the issues I had with it in kind of spending a few hours to build a bot was that it was unaware of documentation after 2021 or changes to code bases after 2021. But it's really coming along. I think, if anybody's aware of GitHub's Copilot product, that will be coming out with a new product based on a GPT-4 level LLM, which is called Codex. I think it's just kind of finding places to plug it in and really makes for a force multiplier. It makes our small team more efficient, able to do more, and honestly able to do more like high value things. The types of things that we want to focus on, which are designing a great game, building a community, figuring out complex engineering challenges, and not kind of the rote things that they help, they need to be done, but at the same time they do detract from like the primary goal. So it's been incredibly helpful in that sense. And we are at this point using ChatGPT-4. We're using Copilot. We will be using Copilot X whenever it's available for us. We use Stable Diffusion as well as Midjourney. So it's really kind of getting in across the board and enabling a lot of, I think, acceleration in what we're able to do.
I still lament the fact that it's not that good at UI yet, unfortunately, but it's getting there.
It's getting there.
We were trying to mess around with a version of it where you can like, where it can do stuff based on an existing visual prompt, and it's crazy to watch it. Like, so it's not it's applying a lot. AI is applying across a lot of different spectrums, but kind of unequally. So watching it learn to do like code really, really well, and then it still screws up like some parts of basic drawing things, and then the kind of application that I would love to use it for, like, yeah, this idea of like, just make me, well, not just make me an image, but in certain circumstances, I need that image with like layers, and I need it to be like heavily manipulatable by me. It's not quite there yet. Or being able to say, feed it, like I want to feed it an image of a window that I designed and say, well, okay, now make me like a completed version of this UI window, or give me a couple options for like colorizations of it, is still not quite there. But I know a lot of smart people are working on these models, so it's really, really cool to watch them.
Yeah, and I think the exciting thing about it is that like it's pushing what we work on towards kind of the unique aspects, and I assume that this is the case for many groups that are using AI more and more. It pushes what we do, I guess, as humans, more to the unique aspect of the project we're working on. And so my hope is that allows that unique aspect to shine through much more, or much more quickly, rather than kind of being somewhat bogged down with tasks that are not so unique.
Yeah. I'd say if you guys are familiar with the concept of product owner, which is like used in a lot of tech companies, it pushes more and more people into the product owner role, where you're making product level decisions and not just micro decisions that lead into larger product decisions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And something I think is a big conversation around this is like, the classic joke in South Park, Dan took our jobs. There's going to be plenty of jobs that I think are like replaced, but I think plenty that are owned or enhanced or provided by this technology. And I think a lot more people who have creative ideas, who don't have the technical background, may be able to get far enough now to maybe take on what it is they want to try or do. And so I'm actually really excited to see this. If you've got a really interesting idea, and there's like 6 different skills that you need to have it, to achieve it, you might just be able to get by, knowing some about each of these things and building out your vision here pretty soon. So I'm super excited about this, and I think it's going to help someone like, Proto with balancing eventually, like just plug in giant spreadsheets and products and like tell it what you want, and like it could probably crunch numbers way faster than a human.
Well, ironically, they're so bad at math right now. Like it's like
That's actually where it falls
all
most
the science
short.
fiction was always like robots are so good at math, and they completely failed to predict how bad AI is at math right now.
Oh, that's funny. So like it's really bad at balancing.
Well, it's because they trained on natural language data sets, which don't include a lot of like written math equations. That's just not in their data set. If they wanted to, though, they could so easily just procedurally generate a ton of math questions and just like have it get good at it. But they haven't yet. I'm sure that's coming shortly. But right now, it's like don't bother.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's just a fun discussion here as a small team on kind of the bleeding edge of already one technology, to be able to integrate new technology to help us do our jobs a little bit faster, a little bit better, and see where that goes. So, I think maybe at this point we'll open up to community questions. If you guys want to raise your hand, come on stage, by all means. Otherwise, type your questions, and we can just keep on talking here. We've got about 20 minutes or so left. And then I'd love to, if you guys have questions about all the information we dropped around like the sale or early community sway, things like that, by all means, there's time for that right now. But if you just have general game questions, or you want to keep the conversation going around like kind of the future of technology, this is not supposed to be a dry conversation all the time. So please feel free to engage here.
To jump up and answer a question that was just like 10 minutes ago about viewing buildings on the surface of asteroids, because it's actually been a topic of conversation internally very recently. The answer is that yes, you'll be able to see which building is which for your stuff as of phase 4, which is as of exploitation. Basically, you're going to be able to see at a glance where all your stuff is on your asteroid, as well as what all of your building types are. So you don't have to deal with, which is something I noticed as well and sort of annoyed me. You don't have to deal with kind of clicking around on your built lots to figure out, where your refinery is, or what did I do with my shipyard. It'll be very apparent at a glance.
Yep, but don't expect a 3D building on the surface of an asteroid. We would love that at some point, but it's not sort of technologically in the cards for exploitation. So what you'll probably see is a colored icon for each building type that you own, and the ability to filter across all buildings on the asteroid. You could set up color filters that you could see a different color for each of other people's buildings as well, but those would just be pips, not icons. So that's sort of the visual level you can expect for exploitation.
Yeah, and I think like ultimately that is where we're driving towards, to have those buildings on the surface. It will still, even at that point, entail having these sort of 2D icons in 3D space that provide that really quick heads-up display to understand where your buildings are. It'll just be that as you zoom in, you'll start to have more fully immersive visuals. And even potentially as an intermediary, we are looking at sort of a holographic projection of those buildings that's kind of hovering over the lots. So that may actually be in the cards sooner than the on-the-surface 3D buildings.
Yeah, but we're aware that like things like StarCraft are kind of where we want to head eventually, with the art level.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a bigger lift for sure. Some other questions, and I think it is fun to talk about. We kind of talked about this in Discord yesterday, and Chris and some of the team talked about it on our planning session. But the idea of kind of like, how do bots play a role in influence, and now with the rise of AI, like what could that look like? Honestly, this is really fascinating and can go in a lot of different directions, but we don't have any built-in NPCs. Influence is not providing anyone you can come and just like talk to learn things or buy things or do whatever it might be. But because the way this game is built, if a player really wants to have fun and develop their own NPC to do anything, that's going to be perfectly possible. I mean, you could literally create NPCs that give you quests if you wanted. You could make NPCs that give you, market data or sell you goods like a merchant. There's a lot of different things we were kind of talking about and maybe laughing a little bit about, like, if you put down your site plan and some materials and then forget to build it and someone comes and steals your materials, which is one of the few areas there's kind of like what you would consider like risk in terms of goods being scooped up. Someone could create a bot that's friendly, that looks for that, scoops up goods, puts them into warehouses, and then the owner who lost them could come claim them for like a small fee and sway or something like that. So,
sure, that's super friendly.
Yeah. I mean, it's friendlier than just stealing and selling.
Yeah, it's friendly blackmail.
Right. Overall, I would say that we encourage the community very strongly to decide if other players, which you can't necessarily tell are bots or not, are they adding value to the game and to the community? If so, to build them up, like to support them, to trade with them, to chat with them, to make friends with them, etc. And if you think a player is not adding value to the game, is harming the community, to act accordingly as well. Consider freezing them out, or like whatever that means to you, because that's how the community is going to grow and become better over time, is by encouraging positive behavior and discouraging negative behavior. And that applies to bots just as well as to humans. If you create a bot that just doesn't speak and just at the lowest possible price for every single thing, like, people are probably not going to make friends with that, and it's probably going to have some trouble, versus a human who's just like able to interact socially. So like, consider adding some personality to your bots, I guess is what I'm saying. Consider making them friendly. Consider going beyond just the min-maxing numbers and think about your bot as a player, as an NPC, as a full player even, and what can you do to make it fit into the community and add value to the community. And I think that'll
It is
take us in
going
the
to be
direction we want to go.
such a cool brand new world we're going to be entering into when I think about this and discuss it.
And
Because,
also,
yeah,
I was going to say we should I should mention again, like if anybody is interested in building a reputation system, it's something that we kind of explicitly don't want to do. Don't think that it should be a sort of done centrally. But I would love to see multiple sort of reputation management systems across the belt that sort of help players classify the general feeling about various crews, whether they're humans or bots.
This brings me the really cool metaphor that comes to my mind based on an article that JP actually linked the other week. I was talking about on-chain gaming and how there's a guy, I can't remember the project that he was, but he wrote a really cool blog post about another on-chain game and how he is talking about the lessons in game design that he has learned through, developing this game over the last year and a half, and how it's so radically different from traditional centralized games. And this equally applies to botting. I think just as much. Like centralized games are, for a long time, there's a history of them taking action against botters, people who try to automate, people who try to do repetitive stuff, gain an economic advantage, stuff like that. And in our world of on-chain gaming, we are heavily, in a decentralized world, our hands are heavily tied by what kind of outright action we can do to just do outright market manipulation or ban people or other stuff. And because of that, this person was saying one of the cool ramifications that has is you are absolutely game design is everything. And you need to be very careful in how you design your game because you can't control who the botters are. It's similar to how, I don't know, how people do high frequency trading on the stock market, right? These are essentially botters out there. They can't really they can't really control how many people run automated scripts to buy and sell. All they can control is making sure there's a healthy market out there, and within the bounds of that, this is going to be kind of the world that we live in. Fascinating to see it evolve, but with people writing scripts, writing personalities, anything that can be automated probably will be in this game.
Yeah, and I also think that in this kind of universe where you own your assets, you own kind of your game and any of the value that you drive there, and whatever you do, whatever you want to do with that is up to you. Some people might be less than enthused about kind of AIs being better than players, but the rise of people being able to use those, anyone being able to use those is going to be quite available in my opinion. And overall influences a game. If it's fun, it's fun. And that I think should be really prioritized. And if it's something where you're trying to really be the biggest business in influence and drive the most sway through you, then anyone who's doing that is going to use any tool available to them. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here that this does not have to take away at all from the fun of the game.
The onus is on us to make it fun through superior game design, not through wielding a banhammer, or going after botters in the traditional way.
And that's the key, right? Because the banhammer fails a lot. It's in a constant battle to keep up with the design of new bots or the implementations of new bots. So ultimately what happens is you just have the people who are able to make the best bots surviving, while those who make more obvious bots don't. And to me, that actually sort of seems inherently more unfair than allowing everybody to do it. And so we don't really have much of a choice. We have to design around that happening, and I think that that's going to gain a lot of or give us a lot of benefit when it comes to a game design that assumes that will happen, and so tries to place everybody on a level playing field when it comes to utilizing those sorts of tools.
I mean, I think I just typed this out, but how I've been kind of describing it is these AIs will not just in influence, but everywhere will soon become kind of our like assistant or companion to help us with a lot of things. I think influence is a pretty challenging game, and strategy games are already sometimes difficult to approach due to how much complexity and how large they can be. If maybe these can bring it in or make it easier for some people to approach, you're going to have more and more people able to play these games and enjoy them. And I honestly think that like there's a huge group of people that we're going to be able to get in front of eventually with influence that are just interested in science fiction, interested in engineering, space, and gaming. And we're intentionally building this game. I mean, Chris has put so much thought into this before Influence had a line of code, was just how do you make a game fun without kind of this like grind that you see in a lot of traditional kind of pay to win type games. And I really hope that over time, like it doesn't matter how many, if it's 5 minutes or 8 hours that you're playing in a day of Influence, that you just get to enjoy it. And if you want to be competitive, you can be competitive with however much time you have to play. Obviously, the more time you have to play, the more opportunity you have to refine your skills. But I think ultimately we just want someone to be able to build their own colony and settlement and settle into Adalia and build ships and buildings and meet people in this game. And if that is successful, then everything else will just kind of fall into place. We got someone who wants to come up on stage, so I'm gonna invite you up. I think, yeah, you're up here. Okay.
Hey guys, so I had a question. This is kind of, and I'm sorry if this has already been covered, but when it comes to when the game April 11th, it's actually mainnet. It's actually mainnet. Will, as far as like starting packs, will only basically the people who had that were part of the original kind of founders group will be able to have like basically the structures, like for example the extracting buildings and such to harvest resources, or will somehow in the game we will be able to, like the first people, like the first when we first get started, we'll kind of have like food, hydrolox fuel, and other structures to get started.
I'd say that the intent for the starter packs is that players will be able to purchase enough sway to pick up the essentials for getting started. If you start with just a crewmate, then you're going to have to figure out something to earn your first sway. That'll be a little bit challenging. Like maybe you join an alliance and they give you some starter materials. But if you pick up one of the intermediate or slightly more advanced priced starter packs, that'll definitely have enough to get you going. Purchased off, sway that you would then use to purchase materials, or either materials purchased directly from the marketplaces. Either way, that'll get you started, and from there you can start prospecting or start extracting or start refining materials and your way up to ever greater heights of infrastructure.
But importantly, no one's going to start with buildings as well, and that's going to be part of the startup thing for everyone. They need to move to the place where you want to build, and that takes time, and then building itself takes time. So we're not going to start off anybody with pre-built stuff.
There'll be seeded materials that you can use to make buildings, but the buildings themselves you'll have to build.
Will the starter packs we'll be able to purchase those within on April 11th within the game?
No, we're not launching on April 11th. We're launching summer 2023. April 11th is the date for our sway sale and for an asteroid sale.
Okay.
Yeah, so the starter pack, the starter pack that will be available at launch, you'll be able to purchase within the client, and it will give you that crewmate, as well as enough sway, like Proto said, kind of get everything you need to get started for that sort of first full game loop, and be able to kind of bootstrap from there if that's your desired direction.
And will we be able to? And I'm sorry, I have some more questions. That's okay. So on April 11th, we'll be able to say if I already have asteroids that are within the belt, I can purchase asteroids that are already within the belt that I already have asteroids within. Is that correct? Like ones that are not currently owned.
Yes, absolutely.
So it'd be like.
Yeah, so as of today, there are, I think, 11,145 owned asteroids. There are over several years. The intention is for all 250,000 to be sold, but 238,000 plus will be available to be picked to buy on April 11th.
Okay, and that way we can actually purchase more asteroids within like the same orbit.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
It's worth noting that actually this ties into a question from Inumai. Who should have asteroids? Who would want asteroids in this game? And I think it sort of came up in chat in general recently too. Asteroids are somewhat of an advanced thing to have. Like, if you are excited about the game and really want to dive in and want to start on your own asteroid from scratch, without knowing the game at all, like, we encourage you to try that. Like, we're not, certainly by all means, that sounds awesome. But if you are somewhat of a like to slow ramp into a game, and learn how to play, how to be successful, and then sort of up your challenge level, we would say that probably you want to start on another player's asteroid, either Adalia Prime, which will have a ton of markets, a ton of opportunities to do things, or one of the Alliance asteroids, or just a friend's asteroid. That would almost certainly be the easier way to start playing this game, to go somewhere where there are other players and establish marketplaces, establish habitats, spaceports, all the things that you're going to need to have an easy time of it. If you buy your own asteroid and fly there right off the bat, well, now you have to figure out, how do I build my first warehouse? How do I build my first, habitat eventually? How do I build my first spaceport if the asteroid is even big enough to justify those things? So there's a lot of logistical questions that you're going to have to solve. There will be some sort of roughing it you have to do before you've solved those logistical questions. You'll be spending a lot of time flying back and forth to that asteroid to bring materials in, to haul back exports. If that type of gameplay sounds good to you, then by all means, like, we strongly encourage that, and I think a lot of players will, in fact, love to do that. But there are also a lot of more casual players who won't.
I feel like you're just making it sound more appealing to me.
Well, that's what we're building this game for, is people who want to do that. So we expect that a lot of you will love to do that. And if that's you, by all means, get an asteroid, get more asteroids. You can never have too many asteroids. But if you are wanting to have an easier start, definitely I would recommend starting on another player's asteroid and then getting an asteroid as you feel confident enough to do that.
Yeah. So, Lynn, do you have any other questions while you're up here before I pass it to Beanstalk?
I'm sorry. Yeah, just one more. Where, I was gonna say, on April 11th, what time of the day, like, are we going to be able to purchase those asteroids within, like, our same, be able to purchase the asteroid and purchase additional sway?
So we haven't set an explicit time. We'll probably announce a specific time next Thursday, but it will most likely be sort of morning U.S. Eastern time that it'll start. But keep in mind that this is not at all likely to be sort of like a first come first serve sale. We're trying to do whatever possible to ensure that's not the case. It may be the case that for certain asteroids that have already been identified as like highly desirable, there may be a little bit of a rush. But in general, just given how many asteroids there are, you're probably okay to take a little bit of time to determine like what you're really interested in.
Okay, awesome.
I'll just say you can whitelist, or not whitelist, but like save certain asteroids now. So if you're interested in, let's say, a CM type and it's 50 kilometers square and you identify it, just add it to your watch list. You can do that today. And then when the sale comes, you'll be very easily able to identify it and purchase that. Also, like Chris said, there's nearly like 240,000 asteroids available, and at that, you're not going to have to worry about all of them selling out in an instant. That would require, what is it, $80 million? So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, if that happens, then we'll have 3D buildings on the surface.
Who knows?
A reminder that for the space sale in particular, there's not a rush for that either. It's a fair launch, so whatever proportion of the overall money that gets paid in, you will get that share of the sold sway if it hits the limit. So there's no rush there either.
Yeah, that's a good point. And how to maybe clear that up for anyone around that is just, if, let's say there's a $1 million cap of sway and $10 million goes into pool, then you get whatever the percentage of the money you spent into that as over the total. So, I really, we've done a lot of discussion around this. We don't want it to be, if you're early and have lots of money, you get everything. It's going to be, come in, buy what you want, and, enjoy the game when it launches. So I'm going to pass it over to Beanstalk. I know you've got a question.
Hey, yep. I was just seeing, partially with the cap of sway, but mostly whether there's going to be any sort of cap for asteroid sales, like total that can be sold in the period.
So no cap on what's left, so that 240,000. I mean, until the belt is sold out. However, like Chris said, if the belt sells out, then you can expect us to doing a lot more.
Okay, I missed this. Is there an end to that period, or is it just from April 11th on?
It's 7 days.
Okay,
7
that's
days.
what I thought. I thought it was a week. Okay.
Yeah, and then it will be reopened right around launch, and at that point, we'll be sort of available in rolling batches. I mean, just to be clear, we do not expect them to sell out during that week.
Yeah.
It would certainly require probably a week pause or so to figure out how we change trajectory a bit.
Yeah, I mean,
that's partially what I'm wondering. Like, if there's just so capless rolling batches after that point, basically.
Yep, exactly. And the whole goal to maybe talk a little bit further out. The goal is really, as we launch exploitation and we build towards discovery, and then ultimately towards conflict, really what we're aiming for is for the belt to effectively start really filling up towards that point, towards the conflict point. So we want them to be rolling, really to not completely sell out over that until that period of time. The idea is that the scarcity of asteroids at that point will sort of segue into conflict and the whole point there of actually fighting over those land.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you.
So there were quite a few questions. I know we're coming up to time. Does anyone here, Chris, Proto, Sergey, do you guys need to take off right at 2 for you guys?
Nope. Instagram.
Okay.
I'm probably going to take off, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so I'm just scrolling up, trying to find some questions. I think a good one to answer so that it's on the recording is like, what is the bare minimum for a player to be able to play? Do you need to own an asteroid, or can you build on Adalia Prime? So the basics here is that you need a crewmate, you need a little bit of ETH for transactions, and it's probably highly advisable to have some sway. So technically, you could start with just the $5 crewmate, join an alliance, and have them bootstrap you. But you're going to be kind of held into whatever that entails. So ideally, even if you are going to join an alliance, I would highly recommend the starter pack. The starter packs will start at $25, and that'll really give you kind of everything you need to just start to enjoy the game. Now, you could spend literally infinite amounts of money if you wanted, but really to get started, I would say between $5 and $50 is going to be great. And then some of the more advanced starter packs will probably be up to $100. So I think that's a good base. You know, $5 to $100 look at as kind of the start cost. And then from there, you play the game. And if you want to put more money in, you can, but you don't have to.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that the starter pack, the $25 starter pack, what we're orienting that around is to support a player being able to build a warehouse, build an extractor, extract the first set of materials, sell that on the market, and ultimately become sort of a bootstrapped player that can then, as they build, fund their activities. So that's a specific game loop. It doesn't mean that any other game loop is not supported or game style is not supported. You could, of course, buy a $25 starter pack. You have your crewmate, make it a merchant, and then you just kind of go to town on the market and find the opportunities and just make money that way, which is what I mostly did when I played EVE Online. There's a lot of different gameplay routes with that starter pack. There are maybe more gameplay routes if you were to go for like a $70 starter pack. But ultimately, you know, the cheaper one, the $25 one, will support any direction you really want to go. And ultimately, even that, just getting that $5 crewmate with a tiny bit of sway, whether it's you know, you get an extra dollar's worth of sway, or you have some of it fronted by an alliance, like JP said, you can absolutely go from there and just sort of find those opportunities to bootstrap your way up.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if there's anyone in the audience that wants to be a content creator and make a stream about influence at launch or starting at phase 4, I will pay to watch people do solo hard mode. They buy a crewmate and like maybe the starter pack. It basically be the starter pack start and like go from that to like purchasing an asteroid through what you've earned through playing the game, and then like building out a sustainable settlement without like joining an alliance, just using marketplace and what you're building. Like that to me is going to be probably the most fun thing for me to do in this game. But again, there's so many different pathways that you can go down that I'm so excited to see. Alliances, solo play, you know, small groups of friends, trying to survive on a, you know, far away, terrible I-type with a high inclination like I own. It's gonna be fun for sure.
No, I completely agree. Like that kind of gameplay, I love to watch Let's Plays for, and I think there'll be a ton of opportunities for that in the game. I mean, basically an open economy, the entire purpose of that is to create as many niches as possible for, you know, profiting, for you know, being a successful, you know, trader or player of the game. You know, the more boring a game is, the fewer niches there are and the fewer opportunities there are. So we're just trying to create this huge reactor to make as many possibilities as there are. And sources of friction are a common way to profit, and in particular, the belt, like just the fact that asteroids aren't next to each other, that they're moving and constantly changing, like that's a huge source of friction that I think will probably be the fundamental driver for profit in the game permanently. The fact that things are moving around all the time. So you know, bear that in mind when you're deciding what you're going to do. Like how can I profit off of friction sources and, you know, make the economy more efficient and claim a niche for myself? Like that's the question you should be asking yourself when playing this game. And hopefully the answer is 10 million different things.
Cathrax has an interesting question about marketing and our goals. I think maybe the best way to put it is that we are aiming to have 10,000 players at launch. Would we intentionally pull back on marketing if we knew for sure that was the case? Maybe. It is hard to know that for sure. So it would definitely be a balancing act, but we're certainly not trying to overmarket. You know, we think that the game is going to stand on its own 2 feet, and people are going to see very clearly after launch that it's, you know, compelling, immersive, a lot of fun, and people will come. So we're really aiming for sort of 10,000 active players, and at launch.
And I'll add on to this because I'm working heavily on kind of this side of things. One thing I will say is that there's just so much work to be done to bring people outside of Web3 into games that use blockchain. And so, as much as it pains me to say this, like we're kind of a pioneer in this, and I think our dollars don't go as far in this industry as they will in a few years. And so, being creative, grassroots campaigns, community engagement, and spending dollars on marketing wisely is really going to help us. I think at launch, no matter how much we push, we're not getting 1 million players at launch. We're not a AAA gaming studio with a huge track record. And so, having that goal of 10,000 players, and personally, I think my stretch goal would be like 2025. That would be huge. That would be massive. That would give us a huge runway for being able to expand into kind of that maybe 1 million player capacity with daily active users of 25K, something like that. That would just be a massive dream. But I don't think that we're going to hold any punches back when it comes to marketing. It's just going to be how do we creatively use the funds that we have to make the biggest impact. There's a lot that we can do still in the Web3 area, and there's going to be a lot that we can do in kind of traditional gaming. I think we've barely scratched the surface for traditional gaming. And for Web3, I would say that our market penetration in terms of brand awareness and people knowing influence can still improve. So I'm excited to keep working on that.
Indeed. There's a question from Panzer about narcotics in the game that I kind of wanted to answer. The answer there is that at exploitation launch, we are not having any sort of medical or mood enhancing or mood changing substances in the game other than food. Food is kind of the stand-in for all such life support, medicine, food, water, air. It's sort of a stand-in for all of that. If you let your crew go without food, they will slowly, after they have eaten a certain amount of the food they have, they'll start rationing, which reduces their effectiveness pretty significantly. So obviously you need to keep the crew topped up on food. And interestingly, food comes from, the ingredients for food comes from the farm, or what we're now calling the bioreactor building as of this week. So the bioreactor produces, it grows food ingredients. One thing it also does is it produces certain chemicals. You can use bacteria to produce certain chemicals. And I think in discovery, that will be one major upgrade path or route of research, route of new technology is medical type research, like drugs that can improve your crew and certain crew behaviors in certain ways. And that will almost certainly be grown in the bioreactor, just like the current food is. So you can look forward to making all sorts of whether they're illicit or legal, I'll leave that up to the community to decide. But making all sorts of things in your farm, in your bioreactor in the future.
Okay, so I think we're going to wind down this conversation here shortly. If you guys have the last few questions, by all means, put them in there. But before we go into any more questions, I just want to kind of have a call to action. Everyone here in the audience, you guys see a lot of you guys here every week. You're huge supporters. You own assets. You guys are just awesome. One thing that I just want to continue to improve is our ability to reach more people. So again, content creators, message me, see if there's anything at all that you want to create. Like, I'm willing to help you guys. We're ready to support you guys. We want to bring creators up from within if we can. If you guys share things on Twitter or retweet our tweets, things like that. I know it might sound silly, but like it helps. So, tell your friends about the game, tell them about the sale, just talk about influence in general. Really trying to continue to build this community the right way. We are not a shill fest. We are not a, airdrop win sir community. This is a game first and foremost, and we want to really break onto the scene with something that people can go, wow, this is an actual game. It's really cool. It's really creative, and they've built their community the right way. So with that, I'll go into questions. It looks like...
Yeah, I just wanted to answer one last question from Shudaxi, because it's something that we are working really hard on. So he's asking, like, how are we going to appeal to traditional gamers when it comes to the ease of onboarding, how easy it is to get started. And it is something we have spent quite a lot of time and effort on. So what we're envisioning is really an experience where you come to Influence's website. You go into the game. Ideally, it prompts you to download the client, and you're playing on the desktop. I think that is the best experience. But regardless of that, you're creating your account, your wallet, if you don't have one already, or you have no idea what it is. You're doing that through. Right now, our focuses are through either Cartridge or through Argent's new web wallet, which is not released yet, but I will talk briefly about it. They're both similar concepts in that they don't require an extension to be installed. They're both integrating RAMP. And the idea is that you can log in with a device key. So in the case of Cartridge, you can log in with just your phone. You can log in with your fingerprint on Mac OS. You can use like a two-factor authentication key. Or you can actually even authenticate with Discord. And then in the case of Argent's web wallet, at least initially, you'll be able to log in with just your email address. Basically, it's a flow where they send you an email, gives you a code, and you log in with that code. And they have no installation of any extension. It is a full-blown wallet, but they manage session keys, and they are installed per app. So in that way, they're trying to isolate that risk of exposing funds across multiple apps. But the great thing is that most of that is transparent to the user. They're just not having to see it. And if you don't know about crypto, it may be the case that the only time you're even aware that something is happening is when you sign the login and start session transaction. So that will probably be the focus of most of our UI work and trying to really make that super friendly and easy to understand. But I honestly think that we will end up at a point that it is easier to start playing Influence than it is to start playing Minecraft or to start playing Europa Universalis or CK3 or whatever. Because first of all, it's web-based, and then second of all, the login process will be so rapid. You'll be able to purchase the Ether and even have us do a multi-call. Again, something that the user won't really have to see, but basically do a multi-call to take that newly purchased credit card Ether via RAMP and automatically purchase that starter pack once you've clicked that button. So we're really, really excited about that because I think we do want to be a game first that's enabled by blockchain and provides all of those additional benefits and not the other way around, like a DeFi protocol that's wrapped in a little bit of gamification.
Yeah, I want to just add to that too. I mean, this game's being built in browser for a reason. I know you can download it, like Chris said, and on the desktop, that's probably a preferable way of doing it. But the seamlessness that you'll be able to go from like desktop to computer and log in with your fingerprint that like has a wallet that owns all your assets, like it's gonna be pretty wild. Once all the kinks get worked out, which is coming much sooner than I think most people anticipate or newer in this environment, and think that blockchain is scary still, is just like, I think we'll probably end up setting the new trend. Once other games see how easy this is long term, I don't see why they're going to want to do anything but this kind of flow. Because honestly, like, I'm tired of making new accounts on every website I go to and entering a new password and saving that in my MSecure and then having to it's just so annoying. So like if we can make that better and that can work across like most applications, I think we're going to see a massive amount of adoption, and that'll lead to like identities and things like that on blockchain, which I'm super excited for whenever they do come.
Cool.
I think that's it. I mean, I see a few other questions, but it looks like you're answering them in chat, so I'm not going to worry about it now. Thank you guys for coming. As always, if you have further questions, just ping us in the general chat or game questions and we'll get to you. I have the recording here, so I'll get that on YouTube as soon as possible. And have a great day, everyone.
Have a great day. Thanks.